So now that we've created our button and created a little bit of Java code to do something when that button is clicked, hopefully you're beginning to see how you can combine code and the creation of user interface elements to actually make an app which displays something to the user and then is interactive as well. In this video, we're going to increase the level of interaction that's possible by introducing a text field that the user can type something into, and then we're going to get the value of that text field and play it in the logs when the button is tapped. So nice and straightforward. I've just scrolled down here. You can see we've got a variety of different type of text fields. We'll be working with the standard plain text, but all these other ones just have certain default options. So the password, for example, is different in that it doesn't display what the person is actually typing in. And then these ones have got various keyboards and validation associated with them to allow the user to enter particular types of data. So they're all very useful depending on what you want the user to enter, but for now we'll just drag in our plain text field. In the language of Android, this is known as an edit text. So I'm just going to drag it in there. Now you notice it's very, very thin by default. So let's just zoom in and select the edit text in the component tree, and then you can see that it's selected there. And at the top of the properties list, so just scroll up to the top, you can see that the layout width is set to wrap content. So that explains why it's so narrow, because it doesn't have any content, because it's a text field that's waiting for the user to type something. So there's a number of ways we could change the width. I'm going to go for one of the drop-down options, which is match parent. And the parent in this case is the relative layout, which is pretty much the whole screen. So if we match the width of the parent, then it will stretch out to pretty much the width of the whole screen, which is good. So now we've got our text field in there. Let's just run the app and see how that looks. I definitely recommend spending a bit of time seeing what these other text fields do. But that's pretty straightforward to just drag them in and then try out the app, and you can imagine what most of them do anyway. So I'm not going to do that here. Just while that's loading, of course, we've got all the options that we're used to. Padding, alignment, size, color, etc., etc. So again, feel free to play around with those as well. So here we go. You can see that the text field has been given the focus. So the cursor is there and it's ready to type. So we can just put whatever we want typing there directly into the keyboard. Fantastic. So that's, I hope, exactly how you would expect a text field to work. Let's just make sure that our button still responds. There we go. Button tapped. Excellent. That's working well. Okay, so now we've added our text field. It's time to change the code of our button function so that it doesn't just print button tap to the logs every time, but it prints the actual value of what the user has typed in the text field. And you can imagine then we can start to add some real genuine interaction into our apps when we've done that. So let's just get rid of the logs down here. And of course, we're going to do most of our work in main activity.java. But before we go there, we need to give our edit text an ID. So I'm going to double tap on it, and it's already got one by default, edit text. I'm just going to change that to text field, just so that we've got something else there that we can refer to rather than the default. And I don't want to put any default text in there. So text field is going to be the ID of this edit text, and that will mean that we can refer to it using that ID and therefore get its value. So let's find out how to do that. Over in main activity.java, we essentially need to do two things. We need to create a variable which allows us to access the text field, and then need to use that to get the actual value of the content of the text field. So once again, don't get too hung up on the actual code of what we're doing, but I will explain it as we go, and it should all be fairly clear, at least the overall idea of what's going on. So we're going to create a variable, which I'll call my text field. So this is going to be our variable, and it's going to have a type of edit text. So in Java, you define a variable by entering the type of the variable that you want to have, in this case an edit text, and then giving the variable name. So you should recognize what to do here. So we can't use edit text until we've put in the edit text framework and we've imported that. So let's do that now. So import Android dot widget dot edit text. There we go. And then that goes from red to black. We've got rid of that error. Okay, so now we've created a variable called myTextField, which has a type of edit text, which is just the Android way of talking about a text field. And we're going to set that equal to the text field that we've created. And we do that by using a command called find view by ID. There it is. So remember, a view is anything on the screen. So it could be the screen itself, or it could be a button, or it could be a text field, or it could be a label, any of the things that we've created so far, and a lot more as well. So we want to find our text field, and we're finding it by its ID. So remember, the ID was the thing that we just created down here. So the ID is text field. Now to get that, we use capital R, and R is short for resources here, and that allows us to access basically anything that's in the app. So it's all the resources within the app, and then we're searching within the resources for an ID, and the ID that we're searching for is the one that I added, so text field. There we go. So it's not necessarily intuitive, but hopefully you can see what's going on there. Essentially, we're searching for a particular view, which is any type of object on the screen, basically by its ID. And then we're looking in resources, which is the general place that we look for pretty much anything within our app. We're looking within the IDs, and then the ID that we're looking for is text field. There we go. Now we've got an error there, and this is a type error. If I hover over it, you can see there we've got incompatible types. And that's because we've set up the text field to have a type of edit text, but this is finding a view. So what we need to do is to convert the view to an edit text. And that's fairly straightforward. All we do is in brackets, just type edit text. And what that will do is it will take this view and convert it to an edit text, which is what we want. And we know that that's going to be okay because we know that this text field is indeed an edit text. So that conversion is not going to go wrong. If I put an image here or something, then that wouldn't work. So we'd have a problem. But I know that this is an edit text. So that's a perfectly reasonable thing to do. So again, quick summary. The edit text tells us that we want to create a variable of a type edit text. We want to call that variable myTextField. We want to find it by its ID in resources, and then look in the IDs, and then the ID that we're looking for is text field, and then we want to convert that from a general view to a specific type of edit text. So hopefully you should reasonably understand what's going on there. You don't need to understand all the details of it, because we're going to go into that in much more detail in the next section, but hopefully that's fairly clear. Our next stage then is to replace this button tapped with the content of the text field. And that's actually fairly straightforward. We'd start by typing my text field, and then we use the method getText. You can see it there. There it is. So myTextField.getText, and that essentially just gets the text of the edit text or the text field. Now we've got an error there. And again, it's a wrong argument type because this needs to be a string. So something that we can send to the logs. And we can fix that fairly easily by using toString. There we go. So just a quick recap. This gets the variable myTextField, which is equal to the edit text that we gave the view text field to. And then it gets the text of that text field, and then it converts it to a string so that we can pop it in the logs. And let's just change info there to text field value or something like that so that it makes slightly more sense what we're doing. Okay, and that's it. So those two lines will get the value of the text field and then print it to the logs. Let's see if it works. Here we go. So I'm going to type "Hi Rob!" and then tap our button, and there it is. Fantastic. Hi Rob. So that's really powerful what we've done there. We've allowed the user to enter some data and then we've done something with that data. So at this very early stage in the course, you've already built an interactive app that does something based on the user data. All right, so time for a challenge, I think. We're going to create a new app from scratch, and we're going to have username and password fields. And the password, of course, should be a password type rather than a general edit text. And then a button which says login. And then when you tap the login button, it displays both the username and the password in the logs. There's your challenge. Good luck. Okay, I hope that went well. I'm going to do it now. So File, New Project. And we'll call this Edit Text Demo. Keep everything else as the default, blank activity, and finish. So remember, we want a username, which is just going to be a standard text field, and a password field. Okay, so let's switch over to our design view. And here's what we want. So we'll just get rid of that for the moment. That's just while the app is being generated. So we've got our hello world. So I'm going to bring in a plain text underneath there, and then a password underneath that. There we go. So let's just change the width as before to match parent. And similarly with the password, we'll match parent as well. There we go. Fantastic. And maybe just move that one up a touch. There we go, a little bit far away. And then we'll have our button, which I'll put in the middle, and I'll just double click, change the text to login as required. Okay, probably just worth running the app just because we haven't done a password field before. So let's just make sure that our password field displays as we would expect, rather than displaying the values, just displays little dots. I think while that's running, we can set the on click, there it is, to login. So that's the method that we're going to create. There we go. So let's just jump over to our emulator. It will then get rid of our previous app and run this one for us. There it is. So it looks good. So there's our standard username. And then if we tap on the password, you can see that displays like a normal password field. Fabulous. Okay, so it's all looking good so far. We need to give both of these IDs. So I'm going to call this one password. And this just updates any references to that field, which is perfectly fine. So we'll just say yes to that. And then we'll call this one username. There we go. So now we've done everything that we need to do on the activity main.xml, on the design of our app. So let's jump over to our Java code. And then, just as before, we're going to create our method that we want to run the login button is clicked. Hopefully you remember we use public because it can be accessible from anywhere, void because it's not going to return anything, and then we call it login, and it's going to be called by the button, which is a view. So it's view with a capital V, and then we normally just call it view with a lowercase v, and then curly brackets to contain our code. So all fine so far. Then we need to get the username and the password, and they both have a type of edit text. So we want edit text, and I'll call the first one username, and we'll type it in a different order this time. Remember, we want to convert it to an edit text, and we want to find view by ID. So that's how we're going to track down our view, and we're going to do that using R for resources, and then .id to get all the IDs, and then username. There we go. And then I'm just going to copy and paste that to get the password as well. So you can see we've got an error here because we've already created a variable called username. So we can get rid of that error by just using password. And then of course, we just change the ID to the ID of the password field. There we go, almost done. So now we're just going to use log.i to log some information. And then let's say we want to log the username, and we're going to get that using username.getText, and then convert it to a string to string, and then semicolon at the end of the line. And it's warning us that we need to import the log framework. So let's do that. Import android.util.log. There we go. So we're almost done. Let's just copy and paste, and then change password to password.getText.toString. So we're taking the password variable, which is our password field, and we're getting the text of it, and we're converting that to a string so we can display it in the logs. Fabulous. If you managed to do all of that yourself, then big congratulations. Even though you've only just started the course, you're already writing interactive apps which allow the user to enter their username and password, and then the app to do something with it, which is pretty advanced at this stage. So let's take a look. So I'll put my username as Rob, and my password, I'll use pass123. Fabulous password. Click login, and there we go. So the username is Rob, password pass123. Fantastic. I hope you managed to do at least part of that yourself. And I hope you've got a vague idea. It doesn't have to be a great idea, but a vague idea what's going on with this code here. As I say, we'll look at it in much greater depth in the next section of the course. You may be thinking that the weakness in what we can do so far is that we can't display any information to the user. So at the moment, we only know how to display information on the logs, not to display it on the screen itself. So that's what we'll see how to do in the next video. I'll see you there.